It's even hard to read, just to read it flat.
Yes,
so
it
imagine
is.
memorizing it. It's a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Odo catches 2 Euridians cheating at Dabo. Julian Bashir says it's heresy to even consider the possibility that a prion replication could be inhibited by quantum resonance effects. And Jake Sisko teaches us that the line between courage and cowardice is a lot thinner than most people think. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 7th Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
We are joined by a very special guest today, director Kim Friedman. Welcome back.
Absolutely.
Yes, I wanted to talk about the backdrop behind me a little bit so people don't think I've lost my mind. And see now, I'm in my formerly teenage daughter's bedroom. She's now a mother, an adult, and she's a mother herself we have a 5-month-old baby boy, but I hurt my toe this day, and so I have to stay in bed with my toe up and ice it. And I want to tell everyone how I did it.
In a surfing accident. Yes, party.
Surfing accident. I wish I could say I was surfing off rocks and I hurt. No, unfortunately, surfing was great. And then I took my wetsuit off, and while taking my wetsuit off, I tripped and stubbed my toe. So, yes, I had a taking off the wetsuit accident, and so I'm trying to keep my leg up, and ice it so it's okay by tomorrow morning. That's it. So here's my fancy little teenage bed. What did you say? It was like a Disney princess bed. Yes.
Yeah, it looks like we're talking to a Disney princess. This is great.
Absolutely.
And by the way, don't worry. We're going to edit everything out after surfing accident. That's it. It's official. It's canon. It was a surfing accident. Yeah. There was this crazy wave. You're out in Maui somewhere.
Huge wave, big wave. Yeah.
Well, even the fact that Kim, you're surfing, like you go out surfing.
I grew up surfing. I'm from originally, believe it or not, Atlantic City, New Jersey. So I was surfing since that's what you did. You know, there was really nothing to do. There was no gambling when I grew up in Atlantic City. So what did you do? As soon as you could allow to be in the ocean, you surfed. You first you boogie boarded, then you surfed. That was it. So I grew up doing it. Yeah, always. I'm not surfing huge waves in Hawaii, but I love to surf.
But you will be once that toe heals.
Oh, yes, I'm going right over. Yes.
By the way, everybody, my name is Ryan T. Husk. We're doing a review today of Deep Space Nine's Season 5, Episode 4. It's a good one. Nor the Battle to the Strong. Story by Bryce Parker. Interesting notes about him later. Teleplay by Renee Echevarria and directed by, what do you know, Kim Friedman.
AKA Disney Princess. Today.
The surfer, the silver surfer.
You're on the set of your new film that you're doing, the Sleeping Beauty.
The Sleeping Beauty of Disneyland. Exactly. Oh my God.
So Kim, you were telling me before we started rolling that some of the stuff didn't look familiar to you when you were originally watching it.
Yes. Well, when I started to watch it, and I literally rolled. I saw the opening scene where they were complaining about the gambling, and they were on on Deep Space Nine on the space station. And I actually rewound it back. I was with my daughter. I said, "Could you rewind? Let's go back." I said, "Wait a minute." I wanted to make sure that my name was on it because I'm looking at this scene truly, and I thought, "Have I gone? Am I senile? What happened?" I didn't remember. I said, I'm not sure I directed this episode. Oh my God, what am I going to do while I'm supposed to be on this podcast? And then we got to even in the spaceship, I was thinking, well, this is a little familiar in the ship, with you and Sadiq. But then when we got to the caves, then I remembered it. And I remembered it for reasons that are going to make you laugh and think a little bit.
Ooh.
Okay, when I got this script, Cirroc, I said, wait a minute. I know that all of Star Trek on TV and Star Trek movies, it's Shakespeare in space. Mm-hmm. There's monologues, there's soliloquies of words that are made up. So no one knows the words. It's impossible for the actors to read. We call it Shakespeare in space, all the monologues. I'm cool with that. I'm down with that. I prefer a little bit of the action stuff myself mixed in with it. When I got the script, I went, oh my effing God, because there was all this voiceover with your inner monologue, Cirroc. And
Yes.
you were very young as an actor. I mean, you're very good, but still very young. And I thought, oh my God, not only are we going to have the monologues, not only are we going to have the action, but we're going to have this very young actor having to play these scenes without dialogue, where the voiceover is going to come, later on. And I was worried. I thought to myself, either this episode is going to be wonderful or it is going to be a lemon. It's just going to be like watching paint dry, because how are we going to make, So I remember thinking, oh my God, when we go to the caves, and we went and searched the caves on Bronson, in California and Los Angeles, there are these caves on Bronson Avenue, real caves.
Right.
As I was going over the locations, I thought, well, the action's got to be great. And then the emotional things. I was so lucky, Cirroc, that I had you and that I had Siddig to work with, because those scenes were hard to pull off. Most of the scenes, if you remember, were just two people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking, you and people lying on the ground wounded.
Like this one right behind me, yeah.
I mean, it was two people, and it was you all the time. You were in almost every scene. Even sometimes you were in the background. I noticed today in some of the action scenes in the hospital, you were in the background. I could see you, like tending to people. So I thought, oh my heavens, Cirroc, he's so young. Okay, it's hard for an older actor to sit and act while a voiceover is playing in the background. I wondered, was this courageous? Did I run away? So when I got the script of this episode, I ran to the writers. I said, wait a minute, are you sure we can pull this off? But we did. And it turned out great. I think it turned out great, but I was scared when I got it. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
What did you think, Cirroc, when you got the episode, when you first read it?
Well, when I first rewatched it, I actually was reminded of the voiceover part that you were talking about. And one of the things that stood out to me was one of my favorite shows growing up was The Wonder Years.
I knew I was going to mention that too. I knew because they did so much of that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they did pretty much every episode had some voiceover work. And then there's a Christmas movie that I like, The Christmas Story, that they play every year about, you'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, and there's voiceover in that as well, where he's, talking. It's in the adult version of himself, kind of talking about his younger experience. So I do like when it's used, and I like when it's used properly. Those are my two examples of
But as
shows.
an actor, what did you think about it when you read it?
I read, as an actor, I said, this is going to be a lot for me to do, because this was a big, this is my basically starring in this episode. And usually the voiceover work is reserved for like the captains. So, right.
Or certain logs, like personal logs, captain's log, chief medical officer's log. That's true. Yeah.
Right. And Worf, I think I remember him doing one last season, doing his own log. But very, very rarely is it done throughout the show.
Right.
It's only done at a certain point at the end of the show, captain's log, in the beginning or the end.
Right.
Right.
And this was all through the show.
This was all through the show. Yeah, and there's actually some parts where, like you're describing, where there's nothing being spoken on camera as far as you don't see any dialogue. It's all just thoughts and thinking, but the voiceover is kind of
right. Did we? I think we did we play voiceover, or did we just read it while you were shooting?
In my mind, you guys were reading, because I
think we read it. Yes.
Yeah.
I think we read the voiceover to you. Yeah.
I do think the voiceover was read, because there's certain parts where you just have to react to something that's being said.
Yes, of course.
And there's no way I think I could have pulled that off without somebody reading.
Right. Well, and we schedule on Deep Space, there wasn't time to go in and pre-record you doing it, and directing you in the voiceover room and blah, blah, blah. So we just read it. I think I read some of it. Sometimes the script supervisor read it, but yeah, we read it. But it was very difficult, especially for, not a seasoned actor. You're like, because you don't want to overdo it. And you didn't. Yeah, I think you did great. But when I watched it today, I thought he really was subtle. he didn't, because you can overact, like trying to play every thing that's spoken, every word, and you didn't fall for that. But yeah, I remember looking at the script and really worrying that it was going to be challenging, really challenging for you, because A, is a big story for you, and it's sorry, I mean, it was a big story. B, it wasn't conventionally written, where you have scenes where you're talking about everything. A lot of it was yourself, self-reflection, very hard to play as an actor, just looking over. And then the third thing was how to make this come alive, since there was a lot of voiceover and everything. And again, I have to hands off to you and hands off to Sadiq, because and some of the other actors as well that played in scenes with you, because I was lucky. I had really good actors. Yeah, it was really good, because if I had a lot of lemons in that cast, it would have been very hard to pull off the scenes.
And speaking of those good actors, there's a few of them that jump out to mind right away. The kid that played opposite me, who was kind of showing me the ropes on triage, I thought he was fantastic.
Well, do you have his name? I don't know his name. I couldn't remember which character he was. I couldn't figure it out from the credits.
I think his name was Andrew Kavovit. He played Kirby, I think.
Yes, I think you're right.
Kirby.
He was really good. He was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Those.
He was.
A young Tom Cruise. I know that sounds insane, but he did. He reminded me of like a young Tom Cruise, very young Tom Cruise, almost like a preteen. But I thought he was good, and he kept that sort of sense of he was enjoying it. He was the opposite of you for a while. He was really enjoying it, the adventure and the excitement. He was feeding off of it, and you, of course, were the opposite. Yeah.
Here's the guy. It's a little dark, but this is the fellow right here, right?
Yes, that's him.
Yes.
Yeah, he was good.
Yeah, he was very good in this episode. The other person that stood out to me was the guy who shot himself in the foot.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, and the scene at the end in bed when you come over to him and he says, you understand, there was like an understanding between you. That was a fabulous scene. In fact, that scene, well, in the writing too, but it could have been like a little quote mark on it. Okay, we'll tie up, nice and neat, the theme of the show. But it didn't. The writing was good. I thought the acting between you two was wonderful, and it was pulled back. It wasn't like on the nose, it wasn't hammered. You didn't hammer it in. And I really, really liked the way the two of you played the scene, understated. I liked the way I directed it, because there was a lot of action going on down there in the hospital and the thing. Yeah. And it was nice just to have this still scene with the two of you just talking to each other. And it wasn't acting. Me, Cirroc. I hate when people are like acting up a storm. I hate it. And it was so in the moment. It was great. It's really, really good. And when I saw it again, I liked it.
Yeah. I did too. You mentioned subtle. There were a lot of subtle beats there. I think one in particular where he said, "I wished I aimed a little higher."
Yes.
And it was just like a throwaway, and he turns over and goes into a little curl up position. Yeah. But I just like the subtleties there. I thought it sold me. The other person who I loved was the guy who got shot. This guy who's behind Ryan.
Me too. I had to look him up.
He was fabulous. He was wonderful.
I was just going to say that's something I noticed was that this episode, it was different for a lot of reasons, and some of which you've already mentioned. Oh. But one of them being that there were a lot of day players.
Yes.
There were a lot of guest stars. There were. It was just like it was Sid, it was Cirroc, and it was an entirely new cast of characters for one episode.
It was it was a universe of new people, of fighters, and the people in the hospital. The woman who played the head, I don't know, nurse or whatever she was, who had the husband. Yes. She was excellent. And as I started watching it, I go, oh, now I remember this. And I remember the terror, we're talking to the writers saying, are you sure? What are we doing here? But I also do remember the casting sessions. And, normally you cast, maybe one person, maybe two that have like a significant, really significant. These are heavy acting scenes for quite a lot of people in this show. So the casting was quite intense the week of, more than a week, like 10, 14 days of prep. There's a lot of casting going on. So, yeah.
Right. There's this gentleman who has been in multiple Star Trek episodes on multiple series as well. There were the three doctors, one of which was kind of showing Cirroc the ropes. There was the lady,
right,
and there was the Bolian, who I thought was really good with his understated humor and delivery.
God,
There's
wonderful.
The guy that shot himself. I mean, that's like 5, 6, 7 characters that all have meaty roles.
Was like, his voice was just incredible. Yeah. I mean, I can't remember. I wish I could know his name. He
almost sounded like J.G. Hertzler, but he looked completely different. But he had that same, rasp in his voice a little bit.
Yeah.
The actor's name is Mark Holton. And sadly, the character name is only Bolian.
He was wonderful. It's interesting.
But he brought that character so much life and made it memorable and stuff. I mean, a lot of people come on and do guest starring roles, and they, sometimes they're not memorable.
Right.
You walk away. Yeah, and this guy was totally believable. He kind of was like the John Candy of Bolians. Who was
yes. And he stood out in the midst of everything going on. You remember that character. It was an episode of really good. We had really good casting sessions, and I'm remembering now. We were very concerned about it because when we have the regulars on Deep Space Nine,
right.
you've got Cirroc, you've got Avery, you've got Nana, you got Renee Auberjonois. You're in as a director, it's Shakespeare in space. It's wonderful. Yeah. Suddenly, you have a multitude of people who you never worked with, right? I've never worked with any of these people, and boy, did they come through! Amazing. I'm glad you brought that up because they're amazing. Yeah, the Bolian was just, every time he was in a scene, you went right to him. It was like, he was great. The John Candy of Bolians, yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And, you don't give yourself enough credit, Kim, because one of the things that you do really well is explain things when you're on the set. And I noticed that when you're working with the actors and you're working with people, you want as much information.
I try. Yeah.
Out there. Yeah. And that actually helps to me. For the actors, for everybody involved, so that we all know kind of what space we're in and what place we're in. And I think you do an excellent job of explaining things in those kinds of simple ways, which made it, I'm sure, a hell of a lot easier for these people that guest starred in this episode.
Yeah, I did, though. I must say this. They were all in a lot of action-driven scenes. And I always feel badly because I know as a director, no matter how much I try to, focus on the actor, when you're on a television schedule directing and you've got a lot of action work, explosions and running and this and the hospital and running around, you do have to spend a lot of time, more so than in a scene with two people talking to each other, on the camera work. So I always tried as best I could in a situation like that to give attention to the actors, because you have to remind yourself, that's what's going to carry the story, not an explosion. So, yeah, it's hard. By the way, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
I was just going
to say.
You're not going to get me this time.
By the way, just so you know, and this is for Cirroc too, the caves are real caves, totally uncomfortable. I mean, those aren't soft rocks. Those are real rocks. The ground is not solid. I was really worried about Cirroc and Sadiq running through the grass and the trees because we just found like places on the hillside. It wasn't like, it was not like a movie where you manicure the set and you have very nice pathways for the actors to go. I was keeping my fingers crossed. When we did a location scout, we tried to find the safest places to run and the rocks in the cave, but it was a very rugged location. So that's also made it very hard. You probably, because you were younger, maybe didn't think of it as at all dangerous, but it was not the easiest location. Yeah.
It's funny you say that because I remember as I was watching this episode, there's a scene where I'm rolling down the hill. I'm like tumbling down. And I'm pretty sure I volunteered for that. Like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then as I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't think I'd do that today. That's
Well, no, there were rocks, and I mean, when you location scout, I try to go over every path, and I try to do the blocking that I'm going to give the actors and the camera people. I'm usually with one of the camera people, and we talk about it. So we're going to do down this hill, but like, do I roll down the hill first? No, I don't, And so my fingers were crossed though, because it was really rough terrain. It's very rocky, very hilly. It's the Hollywood Hills, and it's not manicured there at all. And then there are these caves that are real caves with dirt bottoms and rocks on the bottom and rock all over. So, yeah, go ahead now. It's your turn.
Well, that's actually exactly what. There were two things. One was that I said that I was going to want to talk about the stunts more extensively after the break, but right now I wanted to finish up talking about the location, which you actually were bringing up anyway. Do you remember if there were any other choices when you were kind of picking where to do this shoot, or was it kind of Bronson Caves or bust? Or was it just like a perfect place that you said, we don't need to look anywhere else?
Well, I knew the Bronson Caves, and the location manager certainly knew the Bronson Caves, because we're not the first movie that is shot there. But I also knew the Bronson Caves, and I said, well, I think it would really be good. One of the things about the Bronson Caves that is so great is that, there are not a lot of caves in LA close to the studio too, because we want to be close to Paramount, and Bronson Caves is literally up the hill from Paramount. One of the edges of the Paramount lot is on Bronson Street. So you have to drive up into the hills. That made it very attractive for us time-wise. But the other thing about the Bronson Caves that is interesting is they're pretty big. You can walk in them. There are some places you have to duck, but you can pretty much walk in a lot of those caves. And I wanted to do action. I wanted stretchers going and people moving and running. And so I knew those caves also with a little bit of ducking down in places.
Especially for Cirroc.
Yes, for Cirroc, but you could run through. And I also knew that it was easy to get permits, to shoot up there. But what I was worried about was I didn't really know the bramble, I guess you would call it, the brush around it, where Cirroc had to go down a hill, where there were explosions, where they were running, through things. And we had to find spots that were safe, safe, as safe as we could think that they were safe. So, but I think we certainly went up and scouted. We didn't say we're going to use the Bronson Caves, but once we looked at it, that was it. And actually, the only other choices in LA like that, there are some old subway tunnels that I have shot other things like this in, old subway tunnels that look old, they look old. We've had to mask certain things. And some of these tunnels aren't used anymore because there was like a prior trolley or subway system or something. It's more downtown LA that we use. That's one section. And then there are just road tunnels that you can only shoot in at night, actual like tunnels under Mulholland Drive and stuff. And they can be, with set design and props made to look, okay. But if you got a cave, that's the first choice.
And it's right down the street. That's so perfect.
Right down the street. And I knew it, the camera people knew it. And once we got up there, I started planning, I said, oh yeah, this there's no need to look any further. And the other places all need to have, set dressing brought in to make it look like more like rustic, and we'd have to have two locations. So it was Bronson Canyon was a quick yes when we got there, and we looked around. We were there a long time. I remember we went once location to pick it, and then I went back on the weekend, I think by myself, to plan my shots. And I remember it was like, oh my God, the cameramen are going to kill me. I mean, it's just like, where do you put the camera, the dolly? We did a lot of handheld stuff because it was just too hard to put track down and stuff like that. So yeah.
Well, we're going to take our quick break right now. For everybody at home, we're talking about the caves. I'm going to do a quick share screen here. If you recognize this is the Bat Cave, the infamous Bat Cave. It's also been used in the past in other Star Trek episodes, like the one, I can never remember what it's called, but it's Star Trek The Next Generation, where Beverly and Picard are kind of joined at the mind. And every time I say that,
Right.
everybody yells out the title. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't remember it. But so this is it's an iconic location, and it worked just perfectly for this episode.
Yeah. When we come back, also, I want to talk more about Cirroc and the acting too, if we can.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, me too.
Good.
Usually Cirroc's like, oh boy, here we're going to talk about but now he's like, all right, I'm ready for it. Here we go.
Oh, no,
I don't mind. I don't mind.
All right. So we'll take a super quick break, and we'll be right back on the 7th rule.